Amid the annals of Looney Tunes' extensive history in gaming, Galactic Tazball might be one of their most obscure titles. Released with little promotional fanfare, and only 2 Metacritic reviews to boot, WayForward's unique platformer didn't just fall into obscurity, it launched in anonymity. That's not a slight on the game's quality, of course, and the developer would release a slew of high-quality titles for the DS, many of which have garnered cult followings years later. Sadly, this proves to be a disappointing outing for the Californian developer, as while the concept and controls are certainly interesting, they also serve to limit the game, turning the experience into a slog. Marvin the Martian, clearly tired of the same red landscape of his home, begins taking parts of Earth's land to forge a more scenic locale. Unfortunately, he gets more than he bargained for when the abduction accidentally brings Taz along for the ride. Desperate to escape to find food, the game sees you navigating Taz across 25 levels in 5 settings, while defeating Marvin and one of his robot contraptions at the end of each world. There's little in the way of story here, outside of the opening setup and brief scenes before boss encounters. It's all inoffensive, if very lightweight, about what you'd expect from a game aimed at kids.
You've made me very angry.
Galactic Tazball, despite sounding like a long-lost Space Jam spin-off, is actually a platformer fully reliant on touch controls. That might sound like a disaster, but it works quite well on initial inspection. An isometric puzzle platformer, moving Taz requires you to swipe at the trackball-esque screen at the bottom, and spinning faster results in Taz starting his iconic tornado spin. The rest of the buttons see the devil doing a stomp, which is needed for defeating certain robots, but can also stop you dead if necessary. Between general movement, special gates require you to navigate a blind Taz through a series of hazards on a side-scroller perspective, involving actions like shooting Taz out of a cannon or activating pads for him to cross. The motion definitely takes some getting used to, but it grows quite natural with time, and seeing Taz run through enemies and objects is rather satisfying. The problem is that this concept, while sound, limits the level design quite significantly. Players will notice, upon hitting the second world, that levels start to feel very similar, albeit with a palette swap. New hazards specific to each world, such as water, ice, and crushing blocks, try to spice things up, but it's not enough. It grows wearisome long before you reach the end. The difficulty is also far too easy, thanks to a lack of penalty if you fall off the level. While taking enough damage from robots and hazards can result in a lost life, you'll find yourself accruing lives very quickly. Later stages do start to cause a bit more frustration, with tricky navigation required that the touch controls struggle to keep up with, but it's still a cakewalk. Even the bosses, which follow the free-hit Nintendo formula to a T, can be passed through without much effort. You'll find yourself tired of this one long before beating the finale. There is mild incentive to explore, as each level houses 5 golden kiwis stashed around both the main level and contraption sublevels. Finding all in a stage rewards unlockables such as concept art, but many are so easy to miss and force a level replay if you don't collect them, they feel less enticing. The 25 levels will likely take a good 10 hours to polish off, and though that's not short, some may struggle to reach the end, with tedium setting in fairly early on. There are 3 difficulties available, but even on the supposed challenging setting, the game is easy. Galactic Taz Ball is certainly a colourful game, and it runs nicely for the most part, but it's also quite aesthetically bland. Static backgrounds look very unflattering, texture work is pretty low res, and character models are underwhelming, especially Taz himself, who bores a strange, almost demented look compared to his cartoon form. The audio isn't much better, with the soundtrack consisting of very similar sounding, trumpet-led themes which border on obnoxious at points. Although, the farty-esque rendition of Flight of the Valkyries, which plays over the final boss, is quite funny. Sound effects are harsh, and Taz has only a handful of voice clips for taking damage, falling, and speeding up, which quickly start to grate. Sadly, Galactic Taz Ball proves one of the more middling Looney Tunes games, as well as one of the most obscure. The touchscreen controls work surprisingly well, but are also a detriment to the game's designs and levels, resulting in a series of stages that lack distinction outside of aesthetic changes. When you factor in an irritating presentation and a lack of challenge, it means only the dedicated Taz fans and younger players should give this one a look. With better DS platformers out there, it's a difficult one to recommend.